Welcome. This is the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinscoe, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, Forbes contributor, and general explorer of the service and experience space. The thing I'm really interested in is how do we create organizations that produce better outcomes for both their customers and their people. This podcast has been running since January 2011, and so we have a big archive to explore. Check out the archive at adrianswinscoe.com. That's enough from me. Let's get into the interview. Welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. Today, I'm going to do something a little bit different. Now, in December, I did a LinkedIn live session with Mark Smith of CSG about their new product offering, Exponent Ignite. Anyway, it was such a good conversation about journey orchestration and other cool stuff. I decided to collect the audio from our conversation and release it as an episode of the podcast. Now, given that it was recorded as a video conversation, there are a couple of references here and there, particularly to some visuals in the recording, which don't worry, I will include them in the highlights at adrianswinscoe.com. So do check them out. Anyway, that's enough of a preamble for me, I believe. Let's get into our chat. Let's talk about the stuff that we came to talk about. Now, first of all, why don't we just introduce each other? Say, kind of like to people that people that might be familiar with yourself, people might be familiar with with myself, but let's kind of introduce ourselves so that people know where they're at, so they understand why they're here. So, sure. As I say, well, why don't you go first, Mark? I've been
sure, Adrian. Thank you. So, I'm Mark Smith. I'm the SVP in charge of digital experience business at CSG. I prior to working here was the president at Kitewheel, so one of the early movers in the customer journey marketplace, and that business got acquired by CSG about 18 months ago.
Perfect.
So I look after our whole go-to-market, all of our customers, and our new prospects.
Awesome. My name is Adrian Swinscoe. I guess I'm an advisor, an author, a researcher, I guess a general agitator in many kind of ways for better service and experience kind of outcomes. And the reason why we're here is because I know that I've been hearing quite a bit of a kerfuffle coming out of the CSG shed, as it were, the Secret Squirrel Club. And it's just released some stuff. There's some new stuff, and it's called Exponent Ignite. And I read some of it, and I was like, whoa, that's super cool. So I wanted to know, tell me more about the kerfuffle, Mark. What have you been up to? What is it, and how did it come about?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you put it that way. There's certainly has been a lot of work going on in the tool shed. It's absolutely right. And I guess, so why were we doing all of this work and that is led to Ignite is, been working in this space for a long time, 10 plus years, easy. And there's no doubt that there's a lot of businesses out there who are really focused on customer experience and really understand they need to do something to improve the experiences they deliver. And there's plenty of technology around that can help. But it's like no one's really moving. There's a handful of brands doing a great job. Typically the kind of digital natives find it easy. But for everybody else, it seems really hard and folks are struggling. And so we set about, and the work in the tool shed for the last year has been huge kind of market research, customer research activity to find out what makes it so hard and what actually could we do to make it easier. We've got this fantastic technology that can solve the problems, but it seems like that's not really what people need. The businesses need a helping hand to get going. So we've been doing a massive research. We have an advisory board at the company, our top kind of 12 customers. Spend a lot of time with those organizations, kind of just trying to figure out what it is that goes around a piece of technology to kind of make it successful and make it usable. We've done a lot of work with Forrester Research, a big survey in multiple industries on a global basis, asking CX leaders, marketing leaders, what their top challenges are and what they find hard to get going. Obviously, talking to our customers and prospects. And so that has all output a set of indicators and a whole bunch of stats around what people find difficult.
Mm-hmm.
For example, 90% of the folks in the survey that we did with Forrester, 90% said that deciding how to get started, picking the first challenge, the first project, is the number one challenge in
Right.
how to get going. So Ignite is a set of tools and a set of developments in our Exponent platform to help with that how do you get started kind of challenge.
I mean, because I think it's possibly kind of useful to maybe to back up a little bit and kind of explain, because you talk about you're in that kind of customer journey sort of space, but actually more specifically, this is not about journey mapping or anything. This is about orchestration of journeys and knitting it all together. And a lot of people talk about orchestration, and it's like, yeah, brilliant when it all knits together, and then there's all these blocks and things and other stuff and people and kind of like figuring out. It's like Lego in many, in many ways, but sometimes without kind of the missing pieces or with missing pieces. And I think it's interesting. It's useful to kind of actually frame it. It's like going, yeah, orchestration and trying to knit everything together and not, and trying to help people, but help both customers do achieve their jobs to be done in many ways and in a quick and easy and seamless kind of fashion, but also making it easy for organizations to knit it all together as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And a great point of clarification, Adrian. This is absolutely about doing something, right? That's I think a lot of organizations have kind of got to that point. They've done some of the theoretical stuff, the mapping, the thinking, and they kind of got some strategies that they would like to put in place. But that's the hurdle. That's the big hurdle is, so how do you really get it to work and get your systems to do the right thing for the customer, and deliver a great experience every time to the customer, which is about using your data to feed into those decisions, and that smart use of that data so that you then make the right thing happen, or as you say, orchestrate the systems of communication to do the right thing, show the right content at the right time on the preferred channel. You're going down that track of helping the customer.
But I think the other thing that kind of that makes is interesting about that, because people might go, oh, that sounds kind of brilliant, but like actually we're facing some really big additional challenges, and these are almost like perennial ones, and it's almost the volume gets turned up on these kind of like periodically, particularly now. And I know you've just done a recent kind of poll on this, is one of the biggest challenges is around achieving kind of ROI. And talk to me about this kind of poll, and when do you put this out?
So the full our kind of full report that we're kind of been working on with Forrester is coming out in January. So next month. But yeah, this great example here of this other big challenge, which is getting an understanding of the ROI. And it's actually one of the things that we solve for with our Ignite toolkit, is helping a customer get a prediction of the ROI that's going to come out of making a CX change.
Yeah.
So they can use that in their decision-making processes and funding processes and so on. And it's clearly from the survey we've been doing and the research we've been doing, it's a top challenge for most organizations that getting a grip on the ROI. So it's one of kind of we've got these 4 steps in the Ignite program, and getting a real calculation of the ROI potential, that both scale and time, to deliver that ROI is step 2 of the Ignite process.
Yeah, because you talking about the work you did with Forrester. I mean, to quote one of Forrester's peers, as it were, Gartner, there was they produced a survey. I think it was in earlier this year, sometime over the course of the summer, I think, which said that people are still investing. They still understand that service and experience is important.
Yeah.
And in fact, in many ways, not in many ways, it's actually the reality is that great service and great experiences becomes more important as economic conditions tighten.
Yeah.
Because people become more discerning about where they spend their money, right?
Yeah.
And their research said that I think there's many CFOs in large corps kind of get this, and they're like going, we're totally willing to invest, and we want to invest in service and experience, but we want to invest in one or kind of like about 2 kind of areas, preferably both. We want to put our money in something which we get clear line of sight that's going to potentially enhance revenue, and we can measure that, or it's also going to either enhance productivity or efficiency. I kind of lower our cost to serve. Now, ideally, you'd do both. If you could, that's the sweet spot.
Well,
but those are the 2 things.
Yeah. No, just we be good to talk about this maybe later. But there's great opportunities to do both. I think that's one of the magical things that's possible with digital and a move to digital. Lots of customers, for lots of companies, lots of their customers actually would like to do more things digitally and self-serve, and they would regard that as a better experience at the same time as saving the company money by moving to digital. So there is absolutely an opportunity for that kind of win-win where the business actually gets a better result for the customer, which leads to more revenue at the same time as saving money. That's possible. But you're absolutely right about the macroeconomic thing. I mean, I'm now old enough to have lived through a couple of these cycles, and you're absolutely right. When times get tough, so many businesses revert back to focusing on their existing customers and taking care of them and retaining them, because of the old adage that it costs 7 times as much to get a new one as to keep the good customer that you've got. Some reason when the economy goes back up again and people have got money to spend, that adage kind of goes out the window and say, oh, let's go get some new customers again. But we're definitely in that part of the cycle right now where organizations are looking, and CX is top of the list. I mean, that's so clear that the market and all the education, the kind of education that you do with your books, Adrian, has really got into the mindset now of the boardroom, and organizations get it that it's this CX thing is the answer to that challenge of keeping the customer, making the customer happy, so I know the survey you mentioned from Gartner. It's like 62% of organizations this year are increasing investment into their CX initiatives.
I think one thing I would also going to say, I would kind of quote or paraphrase the late Jack Springman, who wrote a book, and I had it on the podcast. Yeah, I had him on the podcast shortly before he passed away. And so I doff my cap to you, Jack, because you're a beacon within this sort of like space. And he said, interestingly, what's fascinating about the CX kind of space is that people talk about having empathy for your customers, but we end up forgetting, and this is where my final point, I guess, on the ROI thing, because then we need to move on, is that, but people forget that you also have internal customers, and you also have to have empathy for them, and it's almost like the empathy for the business. And this is where the real business talk, the ROI talk, kind of comes in. Is like, if you're a CX leader, your best friend right now should be your CFO. You should be kind of having, should be in kind of like buying him lunch or whatever, kind of like to understand kind of what he needs or what she needs to kind of like, to invest and to support. But I think this is that's kind of the final thing I wanted to say on that. But I also wanted to kind of come back to this Exponent Ignite package that you've kind of developed, because you talked about these different elements, and a lot of the times this kind of technology often feels like it might come with kind of like, oh, professional services and everything else to help you set it all up and things. But actually, there's almost like, it feels like there's a stepwise approach to this. I mean, and it comes with a maturity model, as you say. Well, it comes with a maturity model and an ROI kind of calculator, and some pre-built journeys and configurations. This is like all kind of built in. I mean,
that's right.
Is that back to the kind of like getting people started, that 90% sort of thing? People don't know where to start. Right. So you've almost got to go, here's your pick a starter.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. So there's 4 key elements to the Ignite solution, and yet they're all about helping people get started quickly, helping businesses get going, and it starts with the maturity model.
Right.
The maturity model is, the best way of deciding where to go and what to tackle is to understand where you are, and understanding your current status as a business, as an organization, in terms of use of data, use of channels, intelligence. Understanding that can give you achievable goals to aim at. One of the big problems we see is, as we were just talking about, everybody's interested in the CX thing. Everybody knows they've got to do something. There's 100,000 things you could do. Which one do you tackle first? And over we see organizations kind of tackling the wrong thing, something that's not going to return value, or tackling something that, given where they are in maturity, it's just too much of a reach, and they end up failing, and it's a disaster. Again, one of the stats from our survey with Forrester is the failure rate on CX initiatives is way too high, and it's because people tackle the wrong thing. So you've got to know where to start from.
So talk to me a little bit more about that maturity model. Maybe we can flick it up on the screen so we can see some of the dimensions kind of it. Yeah. I mean, so is this like before you do anything, you end up having to undertake the kind of this assessment?
Yeah. It's a pretty quick exercise. Self-serve. We'll often have one of our consultants kind of take a client through it, but it's a set of questions around the different areas of their business. Three big dimensions. It's about insight, action, and value. So insight: do you have the data?
Right.
Do you know how to use the data to uncover things? Action is all about: do you have the channels and the capability to potentially in real time actually interact with the customer, and you have that capability? And then value, often the forgotten one, is do you understand where this sits in terms of value inside your organization? Do you know how to measure what's being delivered? Are you going to be able to track those KPIs and report back to your best friend, the CFO, the money that's been made? And so we have a set of questions in each of those 3 areas that essentially then maps out the organization in terms of their level of sophistication. Are they a follower, an experimenter, a contender, or a trailblazer in each of those different areas in 6 different dimensions?
Okay.
And so that what that then does is it maps to our journey library. So we've got a library of dozens and dozens of journeys, things we've been doing for the last 10 years and have implemented industry by industry. And this is, in many ways, technologically, this is the real differentiator of the product on the market. Is this having these pre-built? We've essentially encapsulated and engineered all of the know-how we've been gathering for 10 years into this library of journeys. But it's tied into the maturity model. So you understand where you are maturity-wise. That will bubble up automatically the top 5 most achievable use cases, journeys for you to take on as an organization. And
so it's like a guided journey in and of itself.
Well, that's right. There's yes, to overuse the journey word. There's a journey through this. But the step 2 on that journey is where it comes back to ROI. So your level of maturity guides you to what's achievable. The ROI sits in the middle there and tells you, okay, so these are the top 5 things you could do. What are they going to actually be worth?
Right.
What's the delivered value? Again, number of pounds, dollars, euros, and timescale upon which those will be delivered. And like a good ROI model, it's got a range of potential, high, low, and expected. But that then allows a ranking of those potential journeys. So it all ties together that you can then choose, well, this is the one that's going to make me either the most immediate money or the most money over a 2-year time period.
Right.
Helps you make the choice. So, okay, now I now know Journey 73 is the one that's the best fit for me to start with. And the good news is it's there in the system. It's going to need to be a little bit configured to exactly fit, but the thinking's been done. The structure of the journey and the whole infrastructure's done and ready to go. So what used to be for a typical organization a kind of 6-month process of research, thinking, mapping, strategizing, planning, implementing can come down to a couple of weeks of going through the maturity ROI model, and the journey's then ready to go in that system. And then the fourth component is a really hardened library of system connectors to about 100 kind of the most popular communication tools and data systems in an organization. Right. Again, industry by industry, the top tools in each industry, so that that journey can plug into the existing infrastructure.
So it's like an API connector. You're going like, here's the thing, and it's going, exactly. I can plug all these things in, and then hopefully that should be fine.
Exactly.
And wow, I mean, that's brilliant. I mean, I think that, sorry?
I say sounds good, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, no, I was going to say, I was like, first thing I was going to ask about was like, so the CX maturity model and the ROI calculator, I think that's kind of really neat as well, apart from the kind of the templates and everything else, which we'll get to in a second.
Yeah.
How did you derive the maturity model and the ROI calculator? Is that just by analyzing kind of the last sort of decades worth of experience and and you end up kind of being able to populate kind of like, this is what these people do, and this is what they tend to get. This is what these people do. This is what they tend to get. All these different things.
Yeah. So a lot of it from our experience, as you say, the last 10 years working in, essentially 4 big verticals: financial services, retail, telecommunications, and healthcare. Right. So we've got years of experience in those. CSG has a whole division, a whole practice around experiences. Our experience practice have been doing the kind of journey mapping, theoretical customer experience planning work again for many years. So it's a union of that side of the business with the exponent journey orchestration and journey analytic technology side of the business. Essentially, that they got together in the tool shed you talked about, and have been putting this together as a whole framework to develop that maturity model.
Nice, and then going on to the kind of the pre-built kind of like journeys. I mean, I know this is good, like, because it speaks to the whole sort of thing around that 90% you talk about kind of about getting started.
Yeah.
And actually, kind of that's in many cases it's getting started and then knowing what to expect once you get started in terms of the ROI. That's great. But I mean, are we fixed in these kind of templates, or can people take them and go, oh, I need to add this bit, I need to add that bit, I'd like to change this bit, I'd like to go split it up and add that bit into the middle, kind of do this something. I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, no, they are templates, right? So they are very much they're built out and ready to go. But you absolutely, not only do you need to connect them to the actual systems, and there's some kind of custom work there to do that, but they're absolutely adaptable as well. And so, if a client kind of likes most of the template, but would like to change out some of the rules that are used or some of the options around which channels get used at different points. Absolutely, that's kind of what it's there for. The key thing is that we've done. It's all about shrinkage. It's all about helping people get going quickly with something they can have confidence in, and shrinking down that 6 months to a few weeks, so that they can get going quickly. So, and that's the purpose of Ignite.
I mean, it makes kind of sense, because I think, orchestration is always offered. Well, it's always had like a lot of promise. I mean, and it's like going, wow, wouldn't that be amazing? And then you're like going, crumbs, how do I get started on that sort of stuff?
That's right.
And
that's right.
But before we can talk about I want to talk about the implementation side of things, because you talk about the number of weeks. I want to understand what that kind of that means a little bit more. But what I also wanted to ask about was, do you have like one or maybe two examples of kind of clients, whether you can name them or not, about that I feel like done the beta testing. They're already on the journey, used the templates and stuff, customized and something, and what's been their experience and what they've done, what they used it for, and the sort of the things they're getting as a result of that.
Right. Yeah. No. Sure. So one of the things I often say is we've had like 10 years of beta testers, right? Because what's in our our library, or these dozens of journeys, they're things we've built before. They're the starting point, and the library itself is a always evolving thing. We're constantly going to add new journeys, new use cases into that library. But the starting point is all the stuff we've actually done for real clients, and that's an important thing, because that's a feed into the ROI model. Right? The ROI model is kind of hardened on real experience and real things that we've seen with customers. So it's kind of like we've taken all of those great success stories that we've had over the years. Like you say, people get very excited. There's a lot of real examples of the value delivered by doing journey orchestration properly. But then it's been like every company has to start from scratch and build it all for themselves. To get there. And Ignite is all about actually packaging those things up so that they can get there much quicker and essentially reuse some of that expertise that we've been building over the years. And so, in terms of specific examples, some good examples of the kinds of things that are in the library would be, or maybe a good one that's cross-industry is collections. The kind of collections process. Again, big thing. It became a big thing actually in the pandemic, when suddenly a lot of people's lives were upended and collections became a bigger challenge for organizations, and a bigger financial import for them. And so at a time when there was a lot of sensitivity about the poor customer, you don't want to beat people up when times are particularly tough. And so actually we actually do this with 2 of the top 5 banks in the US, use us for an intelligent journey-based collections process, right? And so it's turning collections from a kind of aggressive, mean, knock on the door, bash over the head collections process into a much more empathetic, multi-step engagement with the customer, showing them you understand, giving them options, giving them ability to pay a little bit now, pay a little bit more later, communicate with them on their preferred channel, on multiple channels, to remind them, hey, the next payment on your loan is actually due next Friday, but you still owe us for 2 back payments. How about if could you pay a little bit today? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Just make it digital, make it easy, make it empathetic. Hugely successful. I mean, we are increasing collections like by 30%. We're saving percentage, 2-3% of customers that would have been completely lost to the bank are being saved. Same approach applies to a lot of our telco clients. So a lot of folks in cable and telco, typical area where people get behind on payments. Same thing in healthcare, particularly in the States, where healthcare costs a lot of money. There's bills to be paid and payments are needed. So very repeatable kind of construct of solving that problem with a journey style approach to really engage the customer that we've been able to repeat. And so, some of the cable companies here, organizations like Eastlink and BreezeLine, who are regional operators in the US, have got this same kind of journey style and interactive messaging approach to collections. So
nice.
Kind of one example.
Nice. Do you have another one?
I have. So the Go, I mean, the library kind of spans from the whole life cycle of customer collections, obviously at the kind of well into the life cycle. Unfortunately, sometimes right at the end.
Well, sometimes it's almost like sometimes the distressed part of the life cycle.
Right. And gets a little bit close to that retention, retention and win back. Two other examples. The whole, using digital tools to retain and save customers, identify customers at risk, and engage with them at every opportunity. Don't wait until it's too late. And a lot of organizations, particularly big in telco, spend a lot of time doing very fancy analytics to predict which customers are most at risk. And they have big analytic teams, data scientists who produce predictive models, and every customer kind of gets scored on their likelihood to be an attrition risk, to be a churner. And those scores get used sometimes. They get used maybe for a marketing campaign or to retain customers, make an offer to all those high-risk, high-value customers. Let's make them an offer to stay. What about all the times the customer contacts you? Right? What happens when those customers who this very valuable information about them, but they pop on your website? Do you do something about it? Do you use the digital channel to identify them and make them an offer in real time right there when they're on the website? Or when they're talking to an agent, or when they walk into a retail outlet? Putting that intelligence in all of the channels and taking every opportunity when you've got an opportunity to engage with the customer. Let's make it relevant about their issue. Don't try and sell them an upgrade again. They're one of your at-risk churners. So those kind of things are in there. But we've got stuff right at the other end of the spectrum: onboarding, customer conversion, those things to bring in. So more marketing style applications as well.
And so, that sounds brilliant. I mean, it's like, as I say, you're kind of like, you are leveraging kind of like over 10 years worth of experience, and taking kind of like in many cases, taking kind of like what people have done and what they've used your technology for in the past, and almost like aggregating it out and going, here's kind of how other people can put it to good use. But the other thing I also kind of hear about when people talk about sort of experience and technology and everything else, and a lot of the time it's about implementation and like how big of a lift is it? And I wonder if you could tell me a bit more about that. I know you said that it's kind of with all these things that are all almost like predetermined, where you do the kind of maturity and the ROI assessment, and then you pick your templates and and then you've got all your connectors and things, and it collapses the sort of the sort of time. I mean, that all sounds great in principle. I mean, but what's like the organizational lift for this, as it were?
Well, so there's always a organizational lift that precedes any of this, right? And we're often involved in that, helping the organization kind of realize how to tackle the full kind of issue around customer experience, well, for many organizations, requires an organizational change. It requires leadership attention, because it requires the organization to break down silos. People often talk about silos in technology and data terms, but many organizations have silos in terms of their organizational structure and their people and their incentives. And oftentimes you've got to break that down, otherwise you'll never get, experience needs to be across the whole business.
Yeah.
And to do the right thing for the customer regardless requires all the bits of the business to work together. And so often, and one of the good things for us right now is, I think, thanks to people like you and others in this market, that know-how has developed a huge amount over the last couple of years. And so we have got CEOs, CXOs, board members saying we are now going to do this, and it's going to be led from the top, and the organization is going to rally around. We just won actually a new client in Edinburgh, where you are, and where I used to live before I moved to the States. A very traditional 200-year-old business that is reinventing itself around the customer.
Wow.
Right? Rather than around products. And so absolutely see this stuff happening. And it's when they're at that point, that's when Ignite comes in, is to help them get started with the first thing. It's all about that getting started with your first journey and allowing that to happen quickly. It's not solving every problem, but at least by getting on that on the train and delivering real value back to the organization quickly, that feeds further investment, and it feeds an understanding of what journey orchestration can deliver to the organization that gets more and more people involved. And we see that with our customers all the time. You get the first couple of successes, and suddenly everybody wants to take a journey approach to the things that they're doing, and it spreads.
What's fascinating to me is sometimes is that people talk about silos, and yes, they're very real, and there's a very real problem. But sometimes they are a product of how we've organized kind of the business. And actually, maybe kind of the best way to think about silos is not to think about them, but to think about something that we all have in common.
Right.
And then the silos almost disappear because people then collaborate to achieve an agreed kind of outcome.
Yeah.
And once you get more people to kind of work together, that can then start to achieve this kind of agreed and common outcome, then those silos start to disappear because people start talking to each other.
Right.
And so maybe it feels like to me, actually, some of these templates and then getting started in many ways, it's technology and it's connecting kind of customers and technology and data and process and operations and all these things together. Maybe actually it's going to help dismantle some of these kind of barriers because you end up producing that outcome improvement and ROI and improvement and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it does, Adrian. It does in results terms. I think it's funny. You made me think about something that it's a key part of our exponent solution in general, not just the Ignite kind of accelerator bit, but this point you say, people have done things for good reason. People build their businesses for good reason, and people have invested in technology for good reason. Right? And our customers typically have got great tools already in place. They've got, a great website. Not everybody, but lots of people got a great website built on great technology to do a great job, a great call center system, a great email system. They have these things in place and they do their job really, really well. And sadly, some people get kind of dragged down a track of, to solve the new customer experience problem, it's going to be answered by having a new call center, right? And let's rip out the technology you've got and put a new whole thing in, and it's going to solve that. It's going to solve that CX challenge. That and we just believe that's the wrong approach. Those tools that you've got do a great job. You've chosen for a good reason. Of course, every now and again you need to swap something out and upgrade to something new. But in general, organizations have got that investment. It's about how you bridge across those silos with, a little plug-in bit of new technology that allows those different tools to work together, allows them to share data, share insights, and act in harmony for the customer. And that's our whole approach. Is this? Yeah, we're not ripping and replacing anything. It's there for a good reason. It's about intelligently using those different systems to get the results you're looking for.
Perfect. So quickly, before we kind of go to some audience kind of Q&A, this is kind of like this is brilliant. I can see that you've not been wasted your time in your kind of like shed, kind of like over the last kind of like 10 years, kind of in your secret squirrel club. But how does this kind of evolve over time? I mean, how does it develop? What's the look forward to? I mean, share with us kind of what you can about kind of what's to expect as we kind of go down the road.
Yeah. So there's a few things. A lot of the tools in Ignite are becoming more and more self-service for our customers. The libraries are extending. We we're adding into it all the time because we're doing new use cases for new clients. All of that's now we've got a track to bring that in and expand the library. And I think that the connection between the more and more self-service capability is really going to deliver down the line. A kind of as a service mode, so like almost you could call it CX as a service type approach, where a lot of this stuff will be much more automatic and much simpler, and that's just natural development. It's that this market was very much a kind of innovator-led, bleeding edge kind of capability that the real forward thinkers and trailblazers crafted stuff by hand to fix a challenge. And as things mature, the great work gets made available to more and more people in a more and more automated way, and we're absolutely on that track.
Okay, perfect. So we've got about just over 15 minutes kind of like left. And so Geordie, our producer in the background, has kind of like told me that the first question is from the audience. It's going to be pulled up on the screen. If you could only do one thing at a time to improve CX, what would you recommend?
One thing at a time. What do you think of that one, Adrian?
Well, I'll tell you what I would do. If you're a leader, because I was speaking to somebody earlier today, and there'll be some sort of time difference kind of between kind of like when, I spoke to somebody who was the winner of the CX Leader of the Year, my customer's CX Leader of the Year competition. It's a lady called Manisha Busal, and she works for JD.ID out in Indonesia. And she said she does a bunch of different things. And it goes to your point around insight. But it's about insight in terms that she does, in terms of her own behavior, her own habits. What she does is I'll go and hang out with our call center folks.
Yeah.
I will go and mystery shop our own business. I'll buy some stuff and I will call ourselves and confine it. I will go and mystery shop our competitors. She said, I'll even go down to the warehouse and ride along with the delivery guys all the way down to kind of take the parcel down to the customer's door. And I'm like going, brilliant. And you know what? Because actually then she gets that feel. You get that feel, that insight where people kind of truly start to understand what you can change, what things are really like for people on the down, what's it really like for the customers. And that's that sort of visceral kind of understanding about that insight that comes from real experience. And so me personally, if I was to think about leadership and what I'd want them to do more, is I want them to do more of that sort of stuff to build that empathy, that visceral understanding of how things are. Like, and to your point,
Yeah.
to understand really where you're at right now.
Yep. No, I think that's great, and there's sort of two sides to that in a way. Part of what you just described is is walking a mile in the shoes of a member of staff. So it's the employee side of it. What are they living through to do their job? Doing the same for the customer, and being experiencing what it's like for a customer to be a customer of your organization is incredibly valuable input to seeing what the challenges are and making plans. So those are great examples of some of that upfront stuff, for sure.
The next question, I think this one is definitely for you. In terms of journey orchestration, what are some of the effective ways to break it down and work on improving current CX processes and flows? Blimey. In less than 1,500 words, your deadline's a week on Monday.
What are some of the effective ways to break it down and work on improving current CX processes and flows? So, one thing that comes straight to mind is journey analytics. If you've already got stuff underway and you're already thinking about current processes, current flows of the customer, maybe you call them journeys. Doing an analytic exercise comes back to insight again. Knowing so that you really know what works and what doesn't work for the customer. What paths are they taking? Where do they get stuck? Where are they happy? Where are they unhappy? So you overlay kind of voice of customer data on voice of process data, as I would call it. So the actual journey analytics, this is the steps the customer took. Very different from a journey map. A journey map is your kind of theoretical planned experience. What did the customer really do? And often matching those things up and seeing where they're different is hugely valuable to then deciding what to go fix, right?
Yeah. I mean, to your point, it's like you have to understand, your journey map is your map, right? But it's not the territory. And what you've got to do is you've got to go and understand the territory and understand kind of like at what point the customers starting to find things difficult, or where do you lose them, or where do they leak, or kind of all these different sort of things, or where do they escalate, or where do they channel hop, or kind of for whatever reasons. And I think so. Once you understand those things, then you can start to think about kind of what happens, kind of like what where you can do, where you can take your tool.
That's
right.
The
spanner.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing I'd recommend is thinking about the level of journey process, right? There's one view of a journey which is a lifetime. The whole interaction between every one of your customers and your business, that goes from acquisition all the way through to loss and round a whole life. There's a macro kind of life cycle journey. But it's made up of lots of kind of things that I would call that the whole life cycle. And a life cycle should be made up of lots of journeys, dozens of journeys that actually handle things like a collections issue or a retention issue, an onboarding, cross-sell. Those use cases, those are what we would call a journey, a process. And getting that thinking right about the scale that you're trying to address is what I'd recommend in terms of answering specifically this question.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of add to that, and I would say, look, the interesting kind of thing about it is we need to be careful not to talk about customers in a way that sort of they don't think about. We need to think about kind of what they actually kind of want to do. Like, customers don't talk about experiences, and they don't talk about kind of journeys and things. They talk about stuff that they want to do and achieve and get, or get rid of, or kind of whatever it might be. So thinking about it in that way, so these micro sort of things, and it's a bit like having a relationship, right, with a person or whatever. It's not, yes, it's a continuous thing because you've got some sort of connection, but it's made up of all these little micro things. little conversations or times that you meet up, these little events, they all get knitted together. And these events have their own sort of profile in many ways. And to understand that, and to see it from their perspective, like what is it they're trying to do, and kind of like how can we help them kind of do that, is kind of really important. And actually, it's not about how you describe it; it's about what they want to do and what they want to achieve.
Right. Yeah.
So, next question.
I just flashed up.
This is apparently from Eric. What are some good examples of customer journeys that people have started with that have had quick success to buy time for some of the trickier ones? Oh, air cover, like quick wins. Kind of like, tell me kind of something which is like going, I've got a leaky bath. I've been able to plug it, get a quick win, and it's allowed me to kind of build that credibility internally, that organizational social capital that's allowed you to go and take on the bigger kind of projects.
Yeah. So, classic examples, I guess, of quick wins just come from aligning channels. So duplicating your opportunity. I talked earlier about the retention kind of concept of you know who's at risk. Take every opportunity to address it, and take every opportunity to communicate. Same kind of thing goes in the acquisition, cross-sell, upsell kind of area. Are you linking channels together? The number of people who get at least a 10% sales uplift simply by connecting what happens in the web channel and what happens in an email or other communication channel, so that at least what you see someone do online, you use that in another channel to follow up, to sell, to promote, to recommend, whatever it may be, and back the other way. Show on the website the thing that the customer's interested in because they clicked on it in an email. The number of organizations and it goes back to their email system's great, but it was bought to send email, not to link content into a website.
Yeah,
their website's great, and it was done to deliver great real-time engagement and content to customers, but it wasn't built to link to their email. That's where Exponent comes in as this connector, this intelligent connector that sits in the middle and just gets those different channels to work together. Same with the staff channels like the call center or the retail store, getting the intelligence from what's happened somewhere else to those frontline people so they can use it.
100%. I mean, I think the thing is that the research has shown that, one of the biggest and common frustrations that both customers and service reps kind of like share is, from a customer side, having to repeat yourself, and from the rep side, having to ask somebody to repeat themselves.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like, that's what you're talking about. It's like going, can we not kind of do this and connect it and then present it and going, oh, hi, Mark, I can see what you've been trying to do. Thanks for going to do that. Thanks for bearing with us. Let me just be clear. Is exactly this? Is this the problem you're facing? Yes. Fine. Let me sort that for you right now. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Bosh, bosh, bosh. On your way. Anything else I can help you with?
Yeah.
And you might have waited for a while, but then somebody's recognized you, understood you, respected your time, not made you going to jump through hoops, and you're like going, blimey, thank you. I'm on my way, a happy, happy boy now.
Yeah, the world we live in, simple things make a huge difference to customers because it's not the norm. Sadly, it's not the norm. We have a mantra around show me you know me. Show me you know me. Just the recognition that, Mr. Swinscoe, we know you. You're a gold level customer. You typically do this. We'd like to recommend this as the next step. Huge. Yeah. And it's about smart use of the data that's there. That's the other kind of crazy thing in this world. Everybody's got all the data in the world. Suddenly, it's about using it smartly.
So the next question, crumbs, it's a long one. Adrian, you mentioned that CX leaders should be making their CFOs their best friends in this decision-making process. What other stakeholders do CX leaders need to get early buy-in from, and what do you recommend to get them on board? Crumbs. So I'll tell you, I'll kind of answer the question obliquely, but with a story. And the story is and I think this is about building relationships, because customer experience is all about relationships. But there's an external customer experience, and then there's an internal customer experience. We've never got to forget that our peers, our colleagues, are also our customers. We exist to serve each other, to help each other to achieve kind of both the customer outcomes and also the business outcomes in an efficient and profitable, productive sort of way. And so one of the things I would say is that I'm an economist by background, so I'm going to give you an annoying answer initially, which is it depends, because it depends on your context. But I would say what you should be doing is I would be saying that you should be building relationships with everybody. There's the story I was going to mention was that there's a guy that I had on the podcast a couple of years ago, and he's got a brilliant Dutch name called Martijn Gribnau. And he is a veteran of some really big transformation kind of projects, really successful ones. And so he has an approach to when he's kind of like doing some of these big things, and it sort of speaks to the question. And he goes in, and whenever he gets hired, he goes, "Here's how I operate. If you don't like it, don't hire me." And they go, "Okay, what are we buying?" And he says, he tells them, "I split my time in 3. It's a third of my time I spend hanging out with people on the front line who are serving customers or solving customer problems, because I got to understand what's going on in that fulfillment and kind of problem solving, and also sometimes the pre-sale side of things and all that sort of stuff. So you kind of get like a real kind of sense of what's kind of going on." He says, "The next third of my time I spend wandering about the organization, talking to people." He says, "Because I have to understand how things work, and then be curious about different kind of people and what they're up to, and how my work might be able to help them in their work." Yeah. And it says the final third is I spend my time doing what you're going to list in the JD as being the proper job. He says, and that's how I spend my time, because I think what we forget is that we are in the business of relationships. Organizations are social organisms. Yeah. They're supported by bricks and mortar and technology and ones and zeros and all these different things, but they're powered by people, and we should not discount the power of connection, that human connection in organizations, and how we can use that connection to get things done. So, in answer to the question, what other stakeholders? All of them.
I think that's the right answer. That is the right answer. And it kind of connects to, because if you do this right, it has to be from the top, and therefore it spreads everywhere. Mm-hmm. It spreads everywhere ultimately, and not everywhere's as important, but it potentially is going to go everywhere. So,
yeah. Well, thank you for that kind of question at the end. And I get to tell my kind of Martijn Gribnau story again, but I think we're pretty much, Mark, out of time. I just want to say thank you. One, to CSG for inviting me to come along and kind of like rummage around with all this sort of like stuff. Congratulations on the release and the announcement around Exponent Ignite, because I know it's been a long time coming, but I think it feels like a really practical and easy and straightforward way to help people get started on many of these kind of things, and I would say kind of check it out. But first of all, just kind of like thank you for all the work that you've done up to this point, and problem. For chatting with me today.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for the conversation, and thanks to the audience for showing up on our LinkedIn
Absolutely.
Live.
Well, hopefully there's kind of some left actually. Wow, what a great interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Find out more about me and the work that I do at adrianswinscoe.com. Do leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you have any comments, feedback, or questions about the podcast, then feel free to send me a message to podcast@adrianswinscoe.com. Do tune in again. Thanks very much.